Compatriotas, ciudadanos, amigas y amigos, señoras y señores, buenos días. Me llamo Orión y yo soy partidario de la reforma constitucional en Filipinas. Yo creo que la Constitución del año 1987 es una Constitución que tiene muchos problemas y es por eso que nosotros tenemos que arreglarla, ¿no? All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ryan. So, some of you have actually seen my other videos, and quite clearly I'm using English right now. And the reason for why I'm doing this is because I'm here to basically address the elites of the Philippines. So there's a question that's been going on. A few people are asking them. They're asking, will Rodrigo Duterte successfully be able to shift the country over from third world to first? Okay, can Rodrigo Duterte make the Philippines first world? My answer is no. The reason for this is because it takes something like 30 years before a country that is third world can become first world. All right? It takes that long. It takes 30 years. Lee Kuan Yew was able to do it in 30 years because that's the length of time it takes. It takes behavioral modification. It requires changing people's habits, customs, the way people do things. It requires people to change the way they think, right? So you need to actually bombard people with getting them to think the right way to make them much more competitive around the world, okay? So it's just not going to happen in 6 years, all right? Going from third world to first is not going to happen in 6 years. However, and this is the most important thing that I wanted to say, ladies and gentlemen, the most important thing is that Rodrigo Duterte is the one who will actually set up, he will be the one to set up the right foundation for us to later on be able to move from third world to first. All right? I'm telling you guys, this is a very important step. All right? We're going to need later on someone who will be able to stay on for 30 years of doing the right thing. All right? I'm not talking about a dictator who will stay on for 30 years as a dictator. No, I'm talking about a leader who always wins, whose team always wins in elections because they're doing well. All right? That's what we need. We're not talking about a de facto dictatorship which basically has all the, people being muzzled and prevented from being able to do what they want to do. No. There needs to be behavioral modification, but the way to stay in power is not by forcing people to accept a government that is there by force, but rather by having a system where a good team of people can continue to stay on, all right, as long as they deliver. We are not going to be able to do that under the current system that we have. We have a lousy, totally dysfunctional presidential system. It has been absolutely impossible for anyone to be able to make the far-reaching changes that are necessary to make the Philippines get out of its problems. But if Rodrigo Duterte becomes the president, okay, he will at least be able to set up the foundations for for moving the Philippines towards first world status, okay? What Rodrigo Duterte is going to do is to clean up what needs cleaning up and fix the rotten structures that the Philippines has. So he's going to change a lot of things, but he's not going to be able to stay on forever because he's already 71. He's already old. Lee Kuan Yew, I said in another video, Lee Kuan Yew started when he was 35. And 30 years later, he was 65, and that's the age at which Lee Kuan Yew retired as Prime Minister. All right? So I just wanted to make it very clear. Rodrigo Duterte is not going to be able to do that because he's already old. He's at 71 right now. All right? So if we're going to try to do 30 years of that, he's not going to last that long. All right? So Rodrigo Duterte's job, basically, for the next 6 years is to make sure that he fixes the problems of crime insurgency. Those are the things he talks about a lot. And then to do all the necessary constitutional reforms that my advocacy has been talking about for the longest time. We've been talking all about constitutional reforms, for, things that talk about getting rid of all these anti-foreign investment restrictions. We need to get rid of those. We need to make sure that the Philippines becomes enticing and attractive to foreign investors. When foreign multinational companies think of investing in countries, they look at the constitution first. That's the first place they look at. And if they see restrictions that are in blanket fashion, that's what we have in the 1987 constitution. They're in blanket fashion. They're basically sort of like saying, we don't want you here. That's what they say. And so they don't even care to look at other documents. They don't care to look at the laws anymore. They don't even care about the whole red tape issue, because the first time they actually see it on the constitution, they say, I'm sorry, I like Filipinos, I like hiring Filipinos, I think Filipinos are good to hire, but I don't want to invest in the Philippines if these are the kinds of stuff they have inside the constitution, 60-40, all these kinds of other things. When they see that, they go to other countries. They go look at countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, everywhere else. They see that these countries do not have anything like that inside the constitution. I'm going to tell you how it works, ladies and gentlemen. What's so wrong and stupid about how we did our constitution, the 1987 constitution? We, unfortunately, put restrictions like those, 60-40, these numerical restrictions, these roadblocks to the entry of foreign investors inside the constitution. All right? Other countries don't do that. Other countries, what they do is they don't say anything about restrictions. They don't say anything about it at all. It's totally silent on it. And then they have a few restrictions for certain strategic sectors. So they'd say maybe like defense or, I don't know, certain things. They would try to keep that out. Or at least they may say, you're allowed to come in, but you can't own majority. Or they may say, you may own majority, but you need to share 30% or 40% with the locals. Or something to that effect. But they don't have these in the constitution. And I think that's where the problem of the Philippines lies. We put these things in the constitution. We need to get rid of them. And then after that, we need to fix our laws. All right? We need to change over to a federalist form of territorial administration. We need to change the way we do things. We can't continue on with this overly centralized unitary system. We can't do this at all. It's just not working, If you think about it, a lot of people think, how did Singapore actually do what it did? And people will say, oh, he was able to do it because Singapore is small. Now, I've got an answer to that. The reason why Singapore was able to do it, yes, it's small, it was easier to manage, but we can do the same thing in the Philippines by federalizing, right? It's pretty simple, really. If you think about it, guys, the Philippines is it's not a huge landmass. It's got so many different islands with very, very different people who have different cultures, different languages, different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things. We're not a homogeneous society. So I think it's actually better for us to federalize so that each of the different areas, the regions, they can make their own decisions as far as how they can best bring in foreign direct investors and or even attract local investors to come in. Right? This is what we need them to do. We need the regions to have the ability to more easily change or modify their economic policies. Maybe the taxation, they make the taxes lower, or maybe they could invest in certain types of infrastructure, invest in education, and invest in certain types of education so they could probably produce more engineers and scientists, and then tell all these multinational companies, bring in your companies here, set up a research institution here for these people whom we've produced, who are really good at these fields. These are the things that these different regions can do. They can do it based on tax breaks, on the way they educate their young, the way they do certain things differently. So the easiest, of course, is the tax breaks, and of course making things easier in terms of getting business done, bringing in investors and all that. So you can't really federalize unless you've opened up the economy by removing the 60-40 and all the other anti-foreign investment restrictions. And then lastly, we need to have a parliamentary system. I mean, again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The parliamentary system is just superior to the presidential system. The presidential system, you can look at what's been going on. We are talking all about people. We're talking about the personalities. We see a lot of mudslinging going on. Our own friends, we have fights with our friends based on the fact that they are going with some other candidate or whatever. You know, people are fighting us. There's all these fights going on because the central focus of a presidential system is the personality of the candidates. You're talking about candidates. You're talking about people. You're not talking about what they stand for. I mean, that gets talked about, but it's only secondary. Most of the time when you have a presidential system, it's all about who the person is, how he is like, is he one of us, is he someone that we can respect, etc., etc. It's not so much about how he plans on fixing things. That's the problem of the presidential system, because everything is first and foremost about personality, and then platforms and what they plan to do, that's secondary and tertiary. But in a parliamentary system, you're not talking about candidates, you're not talking about people, you're talking about the teams, you're talking about the parties. So when you talk about party A versus party B, you don't talk about the hundreds of people who are members of those parties. You talk about collectively, what do they stand for? You know, what do they say they're going to do? Lower taxes, another one says higher taxes, but with free healthcare, whatever. And it's up to the electorate to say, this seems to be the best way to do things. So we start to have more intelligent discourse. We start to have more intelligent discussions. People don't mudsling each other based on the fact that, oh, this guy, he's like this, we don't like him, and you like him, so we don't like you anymore. Now, we're not going to have that at all. Under a parliamentary system, what we are going to have is actually a system where people talk about ideas, talk about platforms, talk about programs, talk about plans, talk about principles, ideas. Basically, that's what it is. It's more intellectual. That's the reason why when you look at the headline news in countries that use parliamentary systems, you see a lot of talking about what are the plans of this party or that party. You don't hear things about, oh, he and his wife, they've split up and now he's dating this actress, you know. And I'll tell you one other thing, ladies and gentlemen. The phenomenon of having politicians marrying actresses or famous people, that happens a lot in countries that use a presidentialist system as well as a semi-presidentialist system. I mean, there's countries that have presidential elections where the president becomes a very popular person who does all the decision-making or most of the decision-making. These are the cases where you have these personality-related kinds of things. That's why in the Philippines, we have a party which has several politicians who are married to actresses or former actresses, you know, that kind of thing, or former TV personalities, like, you know, the kinds of like newscasters and stuff like that. I mean, you've got these things going on. These are the things that happen because of that, because it's all personality, it's all about name recall, it's about relationships with people. That's what a presidential system is all about. That's the problem of a presidential system. With a parliamentary system, you don't have that much of it. You can still have a little bit of it. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's like, if it's 60-40, it's like 60% is all about, you know, in a presidential system, 60% is probably all about personality and 40% is about what they stand for, whereas it's the reverse in a parliamentary system. 60% is what you stand for, you know, and then maybe 40% is a few things about the different people in it. But I wouldn't actually say 60-40 in the parliamentary system. It's kind of like 90 versus 10. It's like 90% is all about what they stand for, and then there's 10% in the parliamentary system about the personal lives and stuff like that. Unlike in the presidential system, probably not even 60-40, it's probably 70-30. It's look at what's going on right now. It's all about personality. When people talk about Digong Duterte, it's always about personality, right? People like him or people don't like him because of personality. I'm one of the few people who really talks about the kinds of reforms that he's pushing for, right? Now, there's also a lot of people who understand all these reforms or understand what he plans to do, right? And that's most of us who are OFWs. We're a bit more mature than most other people because we live in a different environment. We compare what's the Philippines like and why is it that things seem to be better in this other country where we're currently living in. You know, in my case, I get to travel around a lot, so I got to see. I've gotten to see all these different societies, and I get to compare. I have a point of comparison which people who are stuck in Manila most probably will not have. And sad to say, a lot of the elites in the Philippines are pretty, I don't know, pretty clueless about all these things, especially those of them who've only been able to travel, as in, you know, travel for vacation, for holidays, never really been able to work abroad. There's people like that, and they don't know anything about how things work abroad. They don't know anything about how things work in other countries. So these are the things that actually need to happen, these reforms. And Digong Duterte is actually going to do them, okay? He's not going to be able to transform the Philippines from third world to first because he's only got 6 years. And I think he's going to be so old by then and so tired because he's going to be stressed out with all the stuff that he has to do. He's probably not going to go for a second term. If he does, if things change, well, fine. But he's not going to be able to have 30 years, not at all. So you need 30 years to do that, to do those changes, to make those transitions from third world to first. You know, you're not going to be able to do it in 6 years or even say 12 years if that's the case. But I don't expect anything more than 6 years because the guy is old. The guy didn't really want to stay on. He wanted to retire. That's basically what he wanted to do. So don't think of it, guys, as Digong Duterte as like the so-called savior or something like that. That we who are supporting Digong Duterte believe that he's going to be the savior who'll change everything. No, we don't believe that. We go for him, the rational ones among us, and most of the people, they all understand how this works. They know that he is there not to necessarily lift the Philippines out, but he's there to fix the fundamental problems that the Philippines has, so that later on, whoever his successor will be, or whichever party will later on win in future parliamentary elections, they will be able to have the tools necessary, okay, to do what needs to be done to move the country forward from third world to first. I don't think it's going to be Digong. I don't think it's going to be him because he's too old. He's already 71. We need a Lee Kuan Yew who's probably at 35 or 40 or something like that. A younger person to do it. A younger person who's dynamic and can basically go from one place to another and address problems, right? An old person will be able to address the most fundamental issues, and that's what he's there for. That's what we're voting him in for. We're trying to make sure that he gets in so that he can make those fundamental, systemic, structural changes. All right? So I really hope everyone understands why we're voting for Digong Duterte. It's not about instantaneous change. We're not talking about him being able to sort of magically transform the Philippines. No, it's going to be a lot of hard work. But he's going to be the one to start these changes, to make the most important changes happen. He's the one who's going to fix what needs fixing so that later on, after his term, when someone else succeeds him, that someone else will be the Lee Kuan Yew, who can hopefully make the Philippines go from third world to first. Because we're going to need someone who can really be presentable to the rest of the world. Later on, we're going to need someone who will be a really great salesperson in terms of being able to sell the country as an investment destination to all these other companies, basically. Basically, someone who will be respected by foreigners, someone that people will look up to, someone that foreigners, when when they look at this new leader, this prime minister, or whoever he will be, they'll say, this is someone that we can do business with, he's someone we can trust, he's someone that will not double cross us, and he's someone who can deliver for his people so that our, what we want to do, which is to invest, will work as well. Because this is all about win-win, right? If we're able to have a really good system in the Philippines, which really works, the companies that invest, they will make money. They'll be able to take advantage of the really good infrastructure, the good people that we have. They'll make money, and we'll make money too. Our people will be able to have jobs. They will earn good salaries. They will be paying taxes. The people will be paying taxes. The companies will be paying taxes. The government will have funds to reinvest in other things that will, once again, bring in more investments. And we will finally be able to have a really good economy, a very low unemployment rate. Currently, the real unemployment rate of the Philippines is probably something like 40%, if you really think about it, okay? A lot of you will not believe it. You're probably thinking it's a single-digit number. No, it's not. It's actually a very high one. There's a lot of tambais in the Philippines. A lot of people who don't have jobs. A lot of people who are considered employed, but actually don't, watch your car, boys? Those guys who try to help you in parking, sidewalk vendors and that kind of thing. These are people who are underemployed. They're in the informal sector. We need to change the situation. We need to create a lot of real gainful employment scenarios for them. We need to really have a lot of jobs so that a lot of people will have decent paying jobs, salaries that can allow them to actually live decent lives. We don't have that in the Philippines. In fact, a lot of people who are middle class are looked up as if they are rich, but they're not even rich. That's the unfortunate thing. We need to change this. We need to change the situation. So Digong Duterte will be the one to change the structural issues that we have. He'll fix those, but he's not going to be the one to make the Philippines become third world to first, because we need 30 years for that. We need a parliamentary system for that. We need a parliamentary system because that's the only way we can get quality, competent people to become the leaders of the country. We don't need actors, actresses, sons and daughters of actresses and actors. We don't need people who have pedigrees and famous surnames and that kind of thing. We don't need people who are sons and daughters of previous politicians, former politicians and all that. What we need are people who are really good, very competent, who really know what they're doing and what they're talking about. That's what we need. And it's in a parliamentary system that these kinds of people can emerge. Okay? We can't have that under this system. You're probably thinking, but Digong Duterte is now doing it. Well, he's had to do all his antics. All his antics are there so that he can win the mass vote. And he needs to do this because that's the only way you can win in a presidential system. You need to get this mass vote. In a parliamentary system, you're not going to have that anymore. So if you guys are all sick and tired, all of you who are anti-Duterte, if you're sick and tired of this, well, I need you to understand the main remedy against having another Arab or even a person who acts like the way Digong Duterte is acting right now with all these not so funny jokes that he does. Well, we need to have a parliamentary system. And unfortunately for you guys, ironically, it's Digong Duterte who's actually pushing for these changes. He's pushing for federalism and a parliamentary system and for the easing of foreign investment restrictions. Okay? It's really weird. I expected Mar Rojas to actually be one of those guys to do this, but unfortunately he doesn't really care. He doesn't really care so much about it. So I just wanted to say again, guys, Duterte, he's the enabler. He's going to be the one to enable the country to move forward. He will make it move forward, but it will not be able to get to first world status under him because of the long 30 years that it takes to happen. Okay? So let's give him a chance. I mean, let's allow him to do what needs to be done, which is to bring in all these changes, these necessary systemic and foundational changes. Okay? That's really all it is. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Hope you have the chance to check out my website. It's www.correctphilippines.org. Thank you very much.